Welcome in, everyone. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. Tuesday afternoon, getting close to clocking out time for folks, and then happy hour. So this is as soon as I could get on today. Yesterday, we went through the backcourt, Arkansas's backcourt. When you look at the roster, 10 deep, and that includes Carter Knox for now, as we assume, based on what we think, that he'll probably be back with Arkansas for his sophomore season next year. So at 10 deep, we looked at the 1 through 3 spots: point guard, lead guard, your twos and threes, your wings. So we went through that yesterday. Today, we're going to go through the front court, fewer names, fewer bodies. And right now, just like we said, the backcourt 1 through 3, numbers wise, resembled what Arkansas did last year in constructing a roster. Very similar front line wise. And what did we always say? That the front line was really thin. You didn't have a lot of depth there. And so far in this 10 deep, that's the case again. Arkansas just doesn't have a lot of numbers on the front line, even though there's talent, there's size here. In some ways, you see more so with the front line that needs, based on the weaknesses of last year's team, were addressed more so than probably the backcourt. When you look at what you're bringing in and who you're retaining, did you really address needs in terms of shooting? We kind of, said no on that multiple times yesterday. Today, I think Arkansas, other than lacking more depth on the front line, if you looked at just the needs and areas of getting better, I think Arkansas probably addressed that. So we're going to start with the retention piece of this. And we're going to go with Trevon Brazile. He's the one guy out of your three bigs. And he's versatile, 4-5, so he's going to be, the way this roster is constructed now, will be your starter at the 4, could help at the 5. What's up, Kevin? Thank you for the comment, Kevin. Thanks for the updates. Absolutely. Yeah, we don't really have any intel today. A little update for Kareem Rutal here in a little bit. But Trevon Brazile, 6'10", list him at 6'10", 230 pounds, so he's not the most physical guy, but he played better at the end of the year against physicality. I think that's important. But 7'4" wingspan, we know he's bouncy. I projected him recently for a 25 to 26 minute kind of role last year, just under 21 minutes per game, 20.9. We know that really expanded at the end of the season by default. Adu Thero was out, and the numbers really, were down because you then had your two leading scorers out of the lineup. You were down to a 7 rotation, and Trevon Brazile was money. Was he not at the end of the year when Arkansas played its best basketball? But when you look at his 20.9 minutes over the course of a season, 6.8 points per game, 5.4 rebounds. That's interesting. In 1.1 block, the rebounds and block numbers, you're saying, well, that doesn't blow me away. When you looked at the arc of the season, you understood Thero was getting a lot of those 4 minutes, but those 5.4 rebounds and 1.1 block per minutes were actually better. They were better than what he did the previous 2 years at Arkansas when you break it down minutes per game. And a lot had to do with the last quarter of the season, the last 9 games when he came into that role with Thero out, and you had a 36-game season, so you divide 9 into 36, it's 4. So that was the final quarter. The last 25% of the season is when Brazile really took it to another level. In those last 9 games, 11.3 points, 9.2 rebounds. And so when you talk, and his blocks were about the same there. But when you talk about blocks being the same in terms of what he finished out on the season at 1.1 per game. So when you really talk about how he escalated things in the final quarter of the season, it wasn't just about the stats. It was about how he was getting those stats. How was he playing? And it was unlike anything we'd seen since his first 9 games at Arkansas 2 years ago, or 3 seasons ago now. The team that, really his best basketball, he left out in Maui, came home and pretty much got hurt 2 games after being back, had a good game against a non-conference mid-major opponent, and then got injured early against North Texas. So he played his best basketball of his career those first 9 games until the last 9 games of last season. So you've kind of bookended, 3 what I will consider overall awkward seasons for Trevon Brazile. But you love the way it finished last year. So right now, he's projected for a bigger role. He's your starter at the 4. He can help at the 5. There's versatility there. But what I really like about it is we mentioned some of these numbers, but he shot 60% overall from the field on the whole season last year. That's a career high for him. He was 36.4% from 3 overall last year, which tracks with his career number, on moderate volume. But for for a 6'10" guy on your front line. I mean, this is a weapon, especially when you looked at these last 9 games again. I went through the averages, 11.3 points, 9.2 rebounds, but he was 16 of 41 from 3 in those last 9 games, 39%. So he vastly improved. That's a good jump in 3-point shooting to 39% in those last 9 games. But the 16 of 41, so he made nearly 2 per game. Remember, we kept saying he had multiple games where he had multiple 3 makes. So he wasn't just taking 1 or 2 or 3 shots and maybe making one here and there. It wasn't just about the percentage going up. Relative to his volume in his career, it all went up. So everything looked good. I mentioned those numbers the last 9 games. When you even look at the last 7 games, he had 4 double-doubles. And he spread those out. He had double-doubles to end the last 2 regular season games when Arkansas had to get wins on the road against Vanderbilt and at home against Mississippi State. Double-doubles in both of those. He had a double-double in the SEC tournament, and he had a double-double in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. So you get an idea of he consistently in different, whether you had to close your regular season strong, he showed up. Postseason, win or go home, he showed up with production. And so Trevon Brazile, to me, coming into this, is a guy that I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think he's got all-league potential if he can consistently play this way. Now, we know he has an injury history, and that's been problematic for him, and that's the one area where you hope, because he and the 2 transfer portal 5s that you brought in, Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle, leave you just like you were last year in terms of depth, because it was Trevon Brazile, that could help at the 5. You had Big Z, Zvonimir Visic, and of course Jonas Adu. So you have 3 bodies that can play that 5 spot. Traditional, even if it's the 4, a traditional type of big body. Adu Thero played that small ball 4, even though he was powerfully built between 6'7" and 6'8". He wasn't really I guess you could say he was a frontline mainstay while he was healthy, but it's not the same as the kind of bodies Arkansas really needs to rely on and have depth there, because if you have injuries with either one of those centers, Brazile can help there, but a guy like Adu Thero, let's say that you got someone like him, that's not an answer there. Even though he's helping at the 4, that's just not someone you can really plug and play with a lot of matchups with other bigger bodies on front lines of other teams, especially in the SEC. So that's where I'm going with that. But Trevon Brazile can now, and the fact that he played so much better against physicality, he didn't have to become more physical. He just dealing with it better. It's not like he changed overnight to a physical player. Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle, when you look at these additions, both 6'10 plus. Malik Ewan listed at 6'11". They're both 230 plus in weight. Pringle at 6'10". I've got projections for Ewan 25 to 26 minutes, very similar to the minutes roll I have for Brazile. And Pringle probably 18 to 20 minutes, something like that. But both of these guys are kind of your 1-2 at the center spots. You've got some depth there. The difference between these guys and Adu and Z immediately jumps out when you look at the girth, the body weight, the size, the mass of how they're built. Pringle more physical than either player Arkansas lost off that front line in Adu and Big Z, and that's an area where Arkansas need to get better. But physicality is one thing. What are you looking at as part of Arkansas's weaknesses last year? Some of it was rebounding, especially offensive rebounding, or closing out defensive possessions with defensive rebounds. But on the offensive glass, Arkansas was also not a strong team. But Ewan and Pringle, Ewan averages 3 offensive rebounds per game, 7.6 overall in 26 minutes. That's really good numbers. Very comparable to what Adu was doing at Tennessee. But 3 offensive rebounds per game, you like that for a team that needs to get better there. Nick Pringle, 2 offensive rebounds per game last year at South Carolina, averaging 6.3 overall in only 24 and a half minutes. So both of those guys, when you start talking about the glass work, Arkansas immediately you think is going to get better in areas they were not strong in last year on the front line. We knew with Big Z it was always a problem. Jonas Adu, it's hard to look at his stats and judge him fairly because he played with that foot injury for so long, and it wasn't until really the end of the year where he started playing his best basketball as he got closer to 100%. But injuries aside, you look at these 2 guys and you say, all right, automatically you're one of the better. You've really improved rebounding, which is something you needed to address. So while we scramble around looking at the overall roster, and we talked backcourt yesterday and say they really didn't address three-point shooting. In fact, there's an argument to be made that they're going to take a step back in three-point shooting. And how ugly could that get as we went through the stats? But I think some of the stuff on the front line, even though the depth part of it, they haven't filled in that missing piece. If they're going to add another big body, they haven't done it yet. So they look eerily similar in terms of you're one injury away from having some real depth problems on this front line, and an injury plus foul trouble or something like that. And now you're kind of crawling through the end of games or stretches of game where you're not playing the way you want to play because you're having to just put bodies out there that may not be the best version of yourself. So that's an important. But in terms of physicality, I think Pringle checks that box. I think even Malik Ewan, even though a banger style is not necessarily his thing, these guys collectively, again, mass and weight and all that, raise the bar. The rebounding, an area of concern. Again, they raise the bar there. So Arkansas addressed needs in terms of what will make the team better by what they're bringing in here. Now, you're losing some shot blocking. There's a trade-off there relative to what a Big Z combined even with Jonas Adu when you look at it collectively. So there is that part of the equation. Again, Trevon Brazile is a really good shot blocker, relative to the positionally. He could be maybe a little better. Maybe he helps Arkansas obviously in rim protection next year as part of that front line group as we see it right now, and even given some minutes at the five some. There may be a few minutes that you'll see Ewan and Pringle on the court together. Ewan is versatile enough, not as a floor spacer, as a shooter. Neither one of these guys are going to shoot threes for you. That's something else you lost and forfeited with Big Z. But you had a trade-off with Z where he couldn't stay on the court because he couldn't defend. He couldn't rebound. So if a guy can shoot 36, 37% from three, who's 7'2", but he's not on the court because of all the other problems that come with it, then you don't have a floor spacer at your five spot because you're not playing. So Ewan can actually stretch the floor because his ability to handle the ball. He's not going to take shots really outside of that 15 feet and in, free throw line extended, working his way to the basket. But because he's a good passer at 6'11", and because he can handle out on the floor and back his way down, bring the ball up the court. I mean, he is a savvy ball handler for a 6'11" guy. Because of that, there might be some combinations with Pringle where they might get a look on the court together because it's not like you've got two big bodies camped out around the basket. You don't have to camp Ewan out around the basket. You can, again, let him work a little bit coming down off the wings and out on the floor a little bit, especially in your dribble handoff far away from the basket. This is a guy that if he doesn't hand off, now you clear out as the guy he might hand off to, you clear out, and now he's got space to work and work another big and get closer to the basket. Pringle can be a guy that's sealing off bodies trying to come help. I've talked about this before, but there may be a look or two where they can be on the court together, and it's not just suffocating if you've got, maybe a Malik Thomas who can knock down some threes, or Carter Knox, while Brazile's out of the game if those two are on the court together. But I love the combinations of Brazile and Ewan because you've got one guy that can handle and make decisions, back his way down. Let's say that help comes. He might kick the ball to the other side, see over the defense, and kick it to a corner where Trevon Brazile, again, can knock down that corner three. So you like some of these combinations even on the front line when you're not even talking about the backcourt right now. And again, depth is a problem. We're going to get to how Cal might finish this class off to finish up this roster. But just those three, you like everything about it other than you do have some question marks about the overall rim protection. You've got a three-point shooter in Brazile. And again, he picked up his volume and his efficiency went up when he did it. So there wasn't a trade-off there. Oh, yeah, he took more, but his percentage went down. Do you really want him doing that? No, he took more and he knocked it down at an even better rate, what was already a solid career 36% free three-point shooter. So, that's kind of how I look at that in some of these frontline combinations. I like how they'll complement each other. I just don't like the lack of depth for a second straight season. And now you're starting to wonder, well, if Arkansas and Calipari only add one more, maybe they add two, but let's say it's one. Are they going to go shooter? Are they looking for someone that's maybe a versatile tweener guy? Maybe that 3-4 role that Adu Thero had last year, but maybe someone more skilled and can shoot some and do it that way, that can help at the 4, give you some frontline depth. But remember, if you have an injury to one of your 5s, that would, if you did, let's say it's a Jameer Watkins as a 3-4, obviously more skilled than Duthera was, and you went that direction. Well, you still have 2 5s. You've got, because Brazile can help and get some of his minutes there, while if someone's out injured. The problem you have, though, is, let's say you have an injury and then someone gets into foul trouble there or something else. You just really don't have a lot of depth. You see teams like Florida with 4 bigs that play a lot, and then 2 more in depth off the bench that are quality. And you say, why can't Arkansas maybe move to that? Maybe go get another big body there. That's one way you could do it. Whether it's a 3-4 more skilled guy that can help with the shooting, if it's a more traditional power forward type, or even one that can do a little stretch the floor and shoot threes here and there at a decent clip to back up Brazile, or maybe a 4-5 kind of guy that, like Brazile, and not a feature guy, but someone that can have a little more frontline versatility like he brings. And you just got that other guy that can do that. There's more than one way to do it. The other way, if you only add one more, you say, okay, as much as that's a need and you don't have a lot of depth there, what about a shooter? Someone in the backcourt, a 2 guard with some experience that could shoot threes. Well, Arkansas, not just shoot them, but shoot them efficiently. Arkansas passed on everybody that fit the bill for that in this portal season. Everybody passed on all of them. It's hard to say that Arkansas's passed on a lot of front court guys right now because they went and got 2 centers that they had to have. They're getting Brazile back. They're not going to have as much numbers on the front line as they do the backcourt anyway. In terms of when you count up the body totals, there's more guard through wing than there are in the front court in terms of how Calipari builds his rosters. And you've got guys like Jameer Watkins who are still out there and in the draft pool. And the one that you really passed on that you thought you were really connected to for a while was Keyshawn Hall, but that was a time when you were also trying to get Thero back and you were holding out for Nate Ament. That happened weeks ago before those things played out. So maybe they've passed on backcourt guys and guys that would fit the bill for improving your shooting because they're content with what they have in the backcourt for a lot of other reasons, and they understand they might be biting the bullet a little bit on 3-point shooting, and it's a wing and a prayer, and you're hoping it gets better. That I can't answer. We'll see how that plays out. We'll see if they add 2 guys. If they go 2, they could address both. Maybe get some guy that knows he's not going to have a huge role in the backcourt but can shoot, and you're going to use him situationally, and could be a guy that you even bring in just to change the defense and how they play you. You can have all the great slashers in the world and above the rim guys and big bodies, but if you don't make a defense respect you out on the perimeter, and you don't have any of that gravity to pull defenders a little closer to players out there on the floor, you're going to see a lot of gap help, a lot of zone defense, and a lot, so the qualities that you like about some of these guys getting to the rim, defenses make it a little easier for them to scheme on everybody. Not that they're going to stop you and just completely shut you down, but it makes it harder. And especially when you get in the postseason NCAA tournament, because you're playing quality teams that had good seasons too, that may have more answers and versatile ways to playing in their lineups. Maybe they can go big or, more physical, but they also can change it up a little bit and spread the floor a little bit. There's more than one way to do it, but when you paint yourself in a corner and some things we know are important, 3-point shooting is an important part of the game. Arkansas may look more like St. John's this coming season than you'd like. And we know for a team that was one of the top seeded teams in college basketball when it got to tournament time, ranked 5th when the season ended in the polls, and Arkansas bounced them in the round of 32. And a big part of that was they became very one-dimensional. St. John's, they were even worse than Arkansas 3-point shooting. And so could Arkansas be trending there? But when we go back to front line, Brazile helps answer that. And do you then look to fill up that next spot with a 3-4 versatile guy that maybe can shoot a little bit? Jameer Watkins, when you look at his percentages, doesn't tell you that, but he does a lot of stuff that's good. And maybe, if he can increase from 32.7%, with a change and maybe get closer to 34, 35% on a decent amount of volume, maybe that's better than filling it with some other big body that can't shoot at all. And you just got another non-shooter out there, but you got a bigger body for depth on that front line. There's more than one way to get through it. So I thought some of that's interesting. Kareem Artal, the 6'7" forward, we were told he was 6'9" originally, 6'7", more like it. He's a depth piece kind of a guy, maybe back in depth, maybe someone that, if you don't replace with a quality guy with what you lost in Thero, can piece together some minutes to support what Trevon Brazile is doing at that 4 spot. But he's not a space eater. He's not a big rebounder when you look at his numbers per minutes even. He's not really, playing in Europe over in that Lithuanian B League or whatever, 31, 32% from 3, not a crazy amount of volume. But he is an older guy. He'll be an older freshman, right? 20 plus years old. I spoke with one of his agents again just to check on his status. Because remember, he's been cleared by Arkansas. He's done all the stuff to get in school and be admitted. He's been cleared through the NCAA clearinghouse, but he still has to get his student visa wrapped up. Well, his agent said he thinks that'll happen now within the next week. So that would complete all of his process. So he thinks the timeline is within a week. So there's a little info for you. I'm not calling that intel or anything, but I did ask him, I'm like, what are your thoughts? Have y'all talked about, or what are your thoughts about maybe a role, or, and he gave the right answer. I'll quote him. He's going to compete for a spot as a freshman. Well, sure. They're coming here to compete and see if they can get playing time. I still view this as more back end kind of insurance policy, situational role instead of a carved out, oh yeah, this guy's getting 8 to 12 minutes per game. I just can't go there right now. I'm not saying it couldn't become that. I'm just not seeing that. I think Arkansas is probably more than likely, having said all of this, probably more than likely going to look for, if it's only going to add one player, probably a versatile 3-4 piece that can help on that front line with depth. And if they go 2 more, man, I sure hope there's someone you look at it and go, that's a shooter. That's a shooter. Now, you look at Carter Knox. If he stays in the draft, it's still early for him. Combine, let's see if he gets invited. Most folks I talk to connect with the NBA draft think he will. Let's see what the workouts are with individual teams. It only takes one team, repetitive here, but it must be said, because mock drafts and even the experts tied to it that won't even give a range where they think he might get drafted, they think he's coming back to Arkansas. If they get wind of any team that's really likes him, is going to give him a guarantee, they know how it works, and now all of a sudden they're going to change their tune. So that's all it takes. So you're obviously monitoring that. There's some important dates to remember coming up while we're on hold here waiting to see. We know that the draft combine is May 11th through the 18th. The G League Elite Camp, which is part of that, they'll both be in Chicago, are the 10th and the 11th. So you start out with the G League Elite Camp, just a couple of days. The top players from that, just a handful or so, will be invited to move up to the combine, and then that plays out. Then you'll have individual team workouts. Those will be spread out, because college players with eligibility remaining have until May 28th. What's interesting about that date is it's not only roughly a month from where we are now, but it's just a couple of days after some other significant dates for Arkansas. You've got move-in date will be through Memorial Day weekend. That's typically when most of your guys that are coming to join the team that haven't been part of the team in your retention, they move in at various days spread out over that Memorial Day weekend. You'll have stragglers that come later for various reasons, but they try to get everybody in on that. Why? Because Memorial Day is always a Monday. This year it's the 26th of May, and then Tuesday the 27th is the first day of summer session 1 classes. And so you know the drill. You get your players on campus, they go ahead and get enrolled, they get through summer, they go through the summer set, both summer sessions, but one's when they want to get them in to start that one, they go through their physicals. And now you also open up your limited summer work, spring and summer work, which is June and July. So you have 8 hours per week on the court, or 8 hours total, 4 for strength and conditioning, and the other 4 per week that you get instruction. So it's limited, and Calipari last year used all that time for individual development. It wasn't team structured stuff where they're going through schemes and putting in offense and defense and going through that. Now, that's not to say he wouldn't change some of that and maybe add some of that, but just based on what we know from last year, they really use that for individual development. That's okay. I'm just kind of reminding everybody what that looks like. So some of these important dates. Before all that, when we're talking current roster and what it looks like moving ahead, before all that, even before some of that and the combine and when all that's going on, you've got the class of 2026 JJ Deshaun Andrews, in-state kid, ESPN top 25 player, 6'6" wing, making his decision announcement on May 15th. That's a Thursday. Then Friday through Sunday, the 16th through the 18th, is the first live eval period. So you're going to have Arkansas's coaches out on the road at these various grassroots events around the country, checking on prospects, class of 2026, 27. You go, what does that matter? Look, you might get a guy that's in that class of 26 that wants to eventually consider reclassing, which might help you fill out this roster. That's what happened with Will Riley last year. Arkansas tried to get in on him. I was covering him in May in Kansas City on the Nike circuit. That particular weekend, it wasn't a live eval weekend, but it was one of the session weekends where you're the best against the best, one of the main Nike on the top the 17U level. And he was making the decision to reclass. Arkansas tried to get in on it. Illinois got him, double-figure score this year, and now trying to be a one and done in the NBA draft process. So, these dates are all important because even though you're saying, well, why do I care about that right now? Let's worry about 26 later. No, some of those guys might reclass. Mika Miernen's one of them. And we talked about it yesterday. I haven't seen him with Brad Bill Elite when this first Nike session this past weekend. And the scuttlebutt's been, we talked about it prior to that, playing out that way so far, was that maybe he wasn't going to do spring and summer this year, which lends itself to maybe he'll reclass. Is he a guy at 6'10" who can stretch the floor? He's already 18. It's not like he's, jumping way ahead age-wise if he did reclass. It'd be on par with his age. If he did class up, it'd be okay age-wise in terms of his age maturity for that class, for that move up. So you don't have a big question mark there. He's not the biggest, strongest guy. So you do look at just like with Nate Ament in some ways, you're looking at the ability for him to translate immediately because of some of that stuff. But he's a legit 6'10". He is a rim protector, a plus rebounder, and has really good floor skill for a 6'10" guy. He can shoot, handle some, get into his shots. And would it be worth adding a front court depth piece, a 5-star guy, top 10 rated 5-star guy in the class of 2026? He'll maintain 5-star status if he does move up to 25. Would it make sense to add to your front court depth? Excuse me. I could see a justification for it because you've got veteran guys. When we talk Brazile, Ewan, and Pringle, Brazile has Sweet 16, nearly Elite 8 experience, right? We'll give him that. So he's got, not only is he a veteran guy, he's got that postseason experience. Pringle played on the worst conference team in the country, in the SEC last year, South Carolina, but we know he has those 2 years at Bama. That includes the last year he was there as a Final Four team just 2 seasons ago, and he was a big part of that Final Four run. In fact, he had a double-double in the Elite 8 game win over Clemson that pushed Alabama to the program's only Final Four. So you look at the veteran qualities, the size, the strength of what these guys have done, and then the postseason part. Sure, maybe you could take a flyer on a 5-star stretch 4 who might help you with 3-point shooting. He might give you good minutes. Maybe there's not a huge expectation outside of a nice NIL payday for a major role or a demand for a major role in minutes, and you just compete and see how that goes. And maybe there'd be a plan to say, look, we want to keep you for 2 years. We don't, I don't see any mock drafts that have him going in 2026, consistently. And so we're talking Mika Miernen again. So there's another way, Jameer Watkins' name's been kicked around so much. And we've talked a little lately about Mika Miernen. There's some other guys in the portal out there, and we haven't even talked to international, whether it's backcourt shooter or front court. And there are names and players out there that, Artel, in theory, might not be the only international guy that Arkansas works toward getting. There'll be some international competition this summer, and Calipari's been known to hang out and add guys late. I mean, there's more than one way this could finish. We've now talked about the strengths of the backcourt, strengths and weaknesses of both backcourt, and today now front court. Kind of went through some of the names, gave you a little information on Artel and what that's looking like for him to complete his process to be able to go ahead and move in. And remember, the goal is he'll be here for summer session 1. That looks like it's on track. Just kind of vaguely talking about how Cal finishes this. More than one way to do it. It's kind of the same talking points there. Would it kill you to go get a 6'10" plus rim shot blocker that's only going to play 10 to 12 minutes a game? No. Again, more of a splashy kind of 3-4 versatile guy that brings scoring, rebounding, maybe improves you shooting a little bit. Sure, that'd be great. Does adding a shooting guard make more sense than getting more depth on this front line? I don't know. If you add 2 more players, you could do both, and then we call it a day. All right, just over 30 minutes in, I'm going to sign off now. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I hope that catches us up to date for now. We're going to have more content this week, maybe as soon as tomorrow. I'm working on some leads on a couple of things that not enough worth talking about at this point, but it might be something that as soon as tonight, I might be coming back on with a live. If not, we'll try to tease it for tomorrow. And if not, we're not going to come on here and just do fluff. We want to really examine things if we're not going to give real intel or insight on who that next player is going to be, because we're just not quite there right now. But until next time, thanks for being here. Take care of yourself. We'll see you soon.